So for now, we're very happy to have also another Berkeley alumni DJ, who got successfully deferred admitted to Stanford GSB, and then he's going to talk more about how to draft up your essays. But the floor is all yours, DJ. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Dylan. Thank you, Karen. So I'm gonna be talking about crafting essays because I think that's what helped me stand out. Really quick introduction. Name's DJ. Was born and raised in the Bay Area. I started out at a community college before transferring to Berkeley. And at Berkeley, I was a part of GRC. I founded CCG. Did an internship at KPMG and at Apple. And I'm currently an associate at KPMG right now, doing finance transformation, working for a private equity firm. I'm also part of Breakthrough, which is an incubator based out in Stanford. We're actually recruiting, so if you're interested, if you're a founder, we just got sponsored by NVIDIA type shit. We just got $8 million in funding. So if you're interested, hit me up about that. But yeah, um, I think my essays really made me stand out because I had like a really, really low GMAT and a low GRE. I took both. I'm not the best test taker. I think I scored like 50th percentile, which if you look at like Stanford's averages, it's like below like the minimum. Like I'm the definition of mid. So I think what really helped me out is by framing what is my framing the question like what is your North Star? An MBA during my undergrad. His name's Alex Berry. He was actually the president of like the Haas MBA program. So he was pretty cool. He gave me this framework to help me like think about like moving forward because ultimately these are what the questions that the admissions officers really want to hear the answer to. So number one is understanding why business school. Like what are your like future goals and why do you need business school to get you there? If you want to be an entrepreneur, why do you need so and so school or why do you need an MBA in general? Second question is why get an MBA now or in your case like in 2 to 4 years? Is there like a specific industry moment? Is there a personal moment? So my response to that when Alex asked me um, something along the lines of like the Philippines has been growing outside of a BRICS country because of these factors, but the Philippine systems don't have the safety net in education, and I want to be ultimately a venture capitalist and I want to be able to invest in um, uh, those industries to help like the economy and stuff. And so be able to answer that question in your essays as well. Third is why that specific business school. A better question is why that business, why that program and not any other program. So for Stanford, the reason I answered was because of the geography, the culture of empathetic leadership. You're following in the footsteps of alum that have done or are doing what you're pursuing to do. Um, that's a really important question because they want to see, they want to understand like, is this dude has this person done their homework, etc. The fourth is more niche. I would say if you get it, great, but if not, it's all good. But this shows more like the underlying why it really matters to you. So, what life, career, or societal problem have you encountered that drives you back to school? What are the gaps in your knowledge/skills? So, really identifying, this is where you are, this is where you want to be, and trying to understand what that gap is. So, you could say, like, Stanford could offer me this so and so education, help me boost these weaknesses into strengths so that you could be able to accomplish your goal. And then lastly, most importantly, I think a lot of people fail to talk about this. Um, but it's what do you bring to the table? Like what can you contribute to the culture of the school, to the classroom, to the clubs, etc. They could like all these top programs, Harvard, Stanford, Warren, they could have thousands of kids. There's thousands of people like lining up at their door. What makes you stand out? And I think that's something important to highlight. Next slide, please. Okay, so cool. Let's get to the practical steps. So step one is all about like laying the foundation to have a successful application. Number one, identify your list of schools. Please, for the love of God, create an account. Copy and paste all those questions into a doc. I didn't create my Stanford account until the day of, and the system was bugging, so that was stressing me out. But so create an account, list all your schools, and have all those questions in a doc so that you could like reference them. You could start thinking about them. Number two, understand the values of the school. For Haas, we all know the four defining principles. For Stanford, is change lives, change organizations, change the world. Schools tend to have it as like their tagline. Schools also tend to like since it's like a part it's ingrained in a part of their as a part of their culture. So like with Stanford, their change lives, change organizations, change our world. It demonstrates like ambition. It also demonstrates like empathy, and that's something that they really want to see in your application. And then the third point is like expand your resume and creating a life map. This is something that I did in my 191P class with Court Worthington. It was a really great class, but it's essentially outlining everything that you've done, not just in the past 4 years, but going even before that. So you could really, gather the themes and the events, quote unquote, crucible moments that have, defined your journey and defined like where you want to be. And then this is an optional step. I know it's like 3 weeks before the Stanford deadline, but consume MBA content, watch videos, listen to podcasts, but most importantly, if you can, network. No, you're all going to Haas, you're all going to Berkeley, so network with the MBA students there. They're all really smart. They got into a top program. They probably have some really great insights. And along with that, if you're able to network with those who are in the program that you're pursuing, the purpose of that is to, really understand the cultures, the values, the expectations, so that you could gather insights to strengthen your essays. Um, and so that's mainly for, um, number one, like sense checking, like, the Stanford, how ingrained is entrepreneurship in the Stanford campus? And number two is like, you learn a lot about like activities and such from them so that you could like name drop it in like your why this school essay. Next slide, please. Cool. So this is an example. I know you can't really see it, but on the left is a rubric of what the Stanford recommenders, or sorry, it's a list that they send out to your recommenders for them to check off. And I use that as kind of like a guide for my essay as a proxy. So, making sure that my all my essays like check off all those boxes. And if it doesn't, I'll have my recommenders talk about that particular category even more. So for the Stanford essays, I'm not going to read all of that, but it's really good to list out all those questions so that's in the back of your mind and you're just thinking about it, while you're like walking to class or whatever. And you could start identifying those themes in your uh, application. Next slide. Cool. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, expanding your resume and putting it into a life map. That's not me, by the way. I just got that off Google. But essentially, every critical moment from you were born, all the way up to today, listing it out, writing it if you can, so that you could recognize recurring patterns, recurring themes. For example, one of my themes was resilience, and by doing that life map exercise, I know it might sound kind of dumb right now, but it'll help build a cohesive narrative for you to organize your thoughts, help you uncover pivotal experiences, your values, your motivations. Also helps you identify those missing skills and experiences that you want to talk about. So, um, again, relaying it back to my application, I wanted to, be a VC to invest in Filipino startups. Um, I got to gather like what are those missing skills, what are those missing experiences, and I talked about things like, going on a global study trip at Stanford, because they fly out a bunch of students to learn about the business world in a different country, and I said I wanted to lead one of those trips to the Philippines. And lastly, you could translate life events into engaging anecdotes, which essentially means like, you know, you could you could say like I value leadership, I value so and so, but it's much stronger if you could like talk about those anecdotes to really showcase your growth, illustrate your story, etc. Next slide. Cool. The first step was all about laying the foundation, but step two is all about like drafting. So you're going to be taking all your research, your life map, those school specific insights that you got from networking and doing your research into actual narratives. So, review each school's essays, use your life map to identify, a few stories that align with the prompts. You don't want to like just kind of throw your life map in your essay and talk about, um, all every single detail, but you want to just talk about those core stories that make you who you are and um, really align with the school, answers the prompt. And regarding your first drafts, um, don't be a perfectionist, which is something that I did. Focus on just getting your ideas in the paper, prioritize authenticity over impressive language because ultimately these schools want to see you have they want to see who you are. They don't care. I mean, I wouldn't say they don't care, but they don't necessarily only care about your test scores or your achievements, but they want to see, who is Dylan, who's this person, what's their driving values, what are their core motivations, and so yeah, just be authentic. I think a piece of advice I got from another deferred MBA applicant, who was a couple years older than me, is if someone found your essays in like the middle of the street, like in a coffee shop or whatever, and they read it that um it shouldn't be able to pinpoint it to anybody else except for yourself. It should be something that's genuine to you. It should be all about you. Next slide. Yeah, so diving deeper into an example. So again, the question is why Stanford? This was my opening paragraph to my Why Stanford essay. I wrote, as an 11-year-old on a trip to Manila, I struggled articulating a sense of irony. I was a Filipino American vacationing in the country that my parents left to build a better future for their children. Why was this the case? Um, Growing up in Silicon Valley with immigrant parents, I pondered a future where Filipinos have equal access to opportunities without needing to leave the Philippines behind. I aim to nurture resilience in my motherland by empowering Filipino and Southeast Asian entrepreneurs by investing in startups that drive economic and social growth as a leader in venture capital. So the reason I wrote that or I picked that anecdote is because it kind of encapsulates why I'm so fascinated about this idea, why this is like my driving motivation. Through that life map, I was able to like pinpoint that anecdote, and then I referenced, the rubric you guys saw earlier about GSB valuing self-awareness, um, and you guys don't have my what matters most to you and why essay, but it also calls upon that because a theme regarding that was resilience, and I wanted to build that resilience in my community. And then it also shows an alignment to Stanford's mission: change lives, change orgs, and change the world. Because it takes an account of a global perspective. It shows, who I am. It shows authenticity. You know. Next slide. And then this is another example for Stanford's Think About Times You've Created a Positive Impact essay. So I was talking about social sector solutions. That was a class that I took at Haas. Essentially, they take, I believe, 12 undergrads and they put you in an MBA class. They split you up into teams. You work on a social impact project, and then your advisors are like McKinsey consultants. And I was lucky because I got a McKinsey partner who also went to the GSB, so I got to name drop him. I wrote, emboldened, I continued to take on research with a sense of pride. Ultimately, my contributions led to key insights that influence our clients' decision to adopt our recommendations, expanding its educational services nationwide into healthcare, blah, 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 blah. More personally, that this showed me that even as the least experienced, I am capable of collaborating with and contributing to a team of MBAs by taking initiative. So one piece of skepticism that I was thinking about while writing this was that I was gonna be probably the youngest person in the room when they admitted me, and I was probably gonna have the least experience. These folks would have had like 5, 6, 7 plus years of experience, and as a deferred MBA admit, you want to show that like, hey, even though we're young, we still got it. We could still contribute. So I wrote about being able to contribute to a team of MBA students, McKinsey consultants, and all that. It also checks off 5 boxes in that rubric. You guys couldn't see it, but results orientation, strategic orientation, influence and collaboration, communication, and team leadership. So that's why I thought it was a particularly strong part of my essay or my application as a whole. Um, yeah. Next slide. Cool. And then pretty much the last step is revision, and you'll probably just repeat this step over and over again until you get to your final product. So some tips are trim redundancies, show don't tell. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but replace those claims, I'm passionate about innovation with being specific. So I built an app to connect farmers with urban grocers, for example. After that, you if you have a solid draft and you feel like you're ready to share it with MBA students and alumni that are in your program who are not in your program. Do these stories resonate with them, and does it resonate with their experience being in that program? And you could also share it with non-MBA readers, really strong writers who aren't in MBA programs, to understand like, is your narrative clear? Is it engaging? Ask them, or what I asked them after each what you call proofread. What's the one thing you'll remember about me after reading this? And they gave me some really good advice, allowed me to like really tighten up my essays. And then I think this is the most important thing regarding your revisions is checking for that golden thread of consistency. So ensuring that every essay connects back to your vision, values, and why MBA. So ensuring that like there's that thread that goes through each of your essays, like although each essay answers its respective question, there should be those common themes that appear and really illustrates who you are as a person. Um, for example, it's a red flag if you're talking about being passionate about agriculture technology, but your experience, your resume doesn't show that you've done anything related to that field. But yeah, I think I have one more slide after this. Cool. Tips on my mama, please start early. Please. I think I said this last time. I started my application like 3 weeks before the deadline. So around this time. So if you haven't started already, start now. Start like thinking about those anecdotes, start making your life map, review your resume. Number two, stay positive and stay authentic. When I say stay positive, a lot of people, they get all um they get negative in terms of like not just their sentiment towards the application, but also inside the application. They might write some like negative statements, like saying like, "Oh, this work was boring, so it wasn't for me," for example, which is what I wrote in one of my drafts. And then someone told me, "Hey, be more positive," so I did. And also stay authentic. Be specific with your goals and career trajectory. If you want to say you want to be an entrepreneur, why? What are you going to do? What do you plan on doing? You don't need to have all the answers, but be specific with that trajectory about like where you want to go. Number four, anticipate skepticism. Um, some like, again, an example was with the essay regarding S cubed, social sector solutions. You want to be thinking about like what would my admissions, yeah, what would the admissions committee think of my application right now as you're reading through it? And the last tip, you're already interesting. You all gone to Berkeley. You're all really smart, really talented. You already have an interesting story. You just got to go out there and show it, and you got to demonstrate to the admissions committee why you could. It's not just your application. It's not just your achievements and your accomplishments. It's that you're an interesting person. But yeah, I think that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, DJ. And again, everyone, if you have any questions, just please put in the chat, and I'll go ahead and say it to DJ. But for the first question, it's going to go back to SVMP. Do you think that really made a positive impact on your application?
Yeah, it did. It showed me like what the life of a MBA student is kind of like. I got to explore Harvard's campus. It was really beautiful. I got to meet some really cool people. Some of which one of which is actually someone who I started Breakthrough with. So that was really exciting. Um, Regarding like the actual application process itself, it had I did apply to Stanford or sorry Harvard, but it gave me a better understanding of like what they would look for and mirroring that to like Stanford. I'm sure like they would have looked for similar things. So I just went with that. Additionally, you know, I'm not gonna dog on Harvard, but it showed me why I didn't want to go to Harvard. I wasn't really a huge fan of the case method, and I knew it wasn't for me. So yeah.
And then we have an event next week with Leland, and I know you worked with Leland for your application, but yeah, do you recommend Leland and their services, and how was your overall experience with that as well?
Yeah, it was a really great experience. I'll be straight up with y'all. It's not cheap. Like I hired uh an admissions coach who happened to be on the admissions committee in the past at Stanford. So she's seen like a bunch of essays. She knows like what an admissions committee thinks like. She's gone through like those delegations, and so she really helped me a lot in terms of getting my essay straight. um I couldn't recommend her name's Dion Chen. I couldn't recommend her enough as a coach, but again, it does cost a pretty penny. And Leland's great. I actually applied to be a coach as well. If you want to hear me talk, shameless plug, y'all can hit me up. uh but yeah, that's Leland.
All right, this person, they're coming from like a technical background and don't have too much experience in business or business schools, but their question is, what do you think what do you think the weights are in the application process? Essay, work experience, etc.
Mm, okay, so the weights, I can't give you the exact definitive answer, but I will say, at least for Stanford, they make it clear that they grade students based on like a holistic approach. So it's not like if you have a bad GPA or bad test scores that they're not gonna instantly knock you out. They're gonna look at your application as a whole. I will say that your essays are probably gonna be um, more important for now, until like the interview. But your essays are gonna be like really, really, really important because that's who they're gonna have in their school. It's just gonna showcase like what type of student you are, what type of person you are. Your test scores and your GPA, that's only shows like one facet of you, and that's as a student, as a test taker. Whereas your essays like show like who you truly are as a person.
And then this person asked, do you have any tips for applying for the Harvard's SVMP program?
Harvard SVMP. I would say I think they might have changed up the questions since I first applied. Excuse me. I would say the three things that they're looking for is leadership, um, intellect, and I'm blanking on the third one. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think it's entrepreneurial drive. I could be wrong, but if you demonstrate that in your applications, I think you'll be solid. Another thing is if you hopefully a lot of y'all could get in, but when you get there, make as many friends as you can, because it's really a great networking opportunity. There's like 200 people there, and everyone's like so supportive.
And this person says, how much support did Leland provide you? Did they help with GMAT prep, essays, interviews, etc.?
Yeah, so they helped me with everything except for GMAT prep, evidently. Uh, I think With the essays, Dion specifically helped me from, phase zero, which is like brainstorming. I mean, I came to her with like a rough draft, but for some of those, she was all like, I think you might have some better stories that you could really showcase like who you are. So there was that. The second part was like the actual interviews. So the she helped me a lot with the interviews. Like we were on call for like 2 or 3 hours, and we were just like going through interview questions that they might ask, and then like trying to edit my stories and tweak like how I say things, a lot better. And then the last part is I think she helped me on my resume. So the MBA resume is slightly different from your like career resume, where like you're not gonna have your skills there. Um, in my career resume, I don't have my community college experience. But she told me like that's a part of you. That's like that's it shows like your academic background. So I put that there, and then we tweaked up some of the bullet points as well. So yeah.
And then another question is, since Stanford asked a really philosophical question, are there any resources here on campus, either like a classroom or any organizations that helped you kind of narrate your story or, try to get like that touchy feeling experience?
Yeah. So there's a class, UGBA 191P. I think I mentioned it earlier, but it's leadership and personal development by Court Worthington. And that class is modeled off of Stanford GSB's flagship course, which is called Touchy Feely. It's literally called Touchy Feely, and it's all about you know, go like self-awareness, introspection, and getting into like your feelings. So the exercise I mentioned earlier about that life map, that was an exercise that we did in class, and I believe it's an exercise they do at Stanford, that really illustrates like where you are and where you've been and where you are now. And then in Court's class we also went further and did where we are and where we're planning on going, kind of like manifesting where our future is going to take us. And I think, we also did like these weekly journals that allowed us to reflect on specific instances in our lives. And the practice of writing, actually writing down your feelings and talking about those experiences allowed me to, capture that in my application.